And I agree with you on that. I wonder about, particularly in the case of science, kind of there's two factors. I wonder if you can speak to. One is how much the for profit model of big pharma plays a role in spreading skepticism. I think that conflict of interest is what drives some people to reject science because they think they're rejecting big pharma. Is basically what I'm getting at there. I'm not suggesting that we should reject all scientific
Right,
research,
right.
but I think that conflict of interest is one thing. And then a second thing is, and I think this is lost to history, but the COVID really allowed people to politicize science in a way that I hadn't seen before. And as you pointed out, it was a long time coming due to like
Yeah.
the Rush Limbaugh, Tucker Carlson's of the world. But I mean, we're talking a lot about Republicans. Obviously, there's one in the White House, but Democrats played a role here. I mean, I think they really deified Anthony Fauci while he was giving mixed messages on things like masks and vaccines. And then, of course, and this is lost history again, in toward the end of Donald Trump's first term, there were people out there like Kamala Harris, who was then a vice presidential candidate, saying she wouldn't get the vaccine because it came from Trump's Operation Warp Speed.
If the Trump administration approves a vaccine before or after the election, should Americans take it, and would you take it?
If the public health professionals, if Dr. Fauci, if the doctors tell us that we should take it, I'll be the first in line to take it. Absolutely. But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
I will say that I would not trust Donald Trump, and it would have to be a credible source of information that talks about the efficacy and the reliability of whatever he's talking about. I will not take his word for it. He wants us to inject bleach. No, I will not take his word.
A lot of that stuff got taken down off the internet after she got elected, and the Democrats changed their messaging because now they're in power, and they recognize that the vaccine was for good health. So I wonder also, can you speak to a little bit about that, about the conflict of interest with for-profit and big pharma, and how the Democrats themselves politicized? Because I think that contributed to the bad framework for science that Republicans had already created.
Yeah. I'll try to put everything together because you raised a couple of issues. I believe that the way in which big money coming from corporations is tied to the development of medicine and vaccines and everything else is problematic. I think many of us agree that the system as it is not doing well on many of these regards. We do have a history of mistakes or cover-ups and all kind of problematic behaviors from interested parties in the medical establishment before. So I have nothing but empathy to people who are worried about side effects or about not necessarily getting the best treatment. John Oliver just did a segment on MAHA, on Make America Healthy Again. And he says at the beginning of the show, he says, like, everybody suffered from the medical establishment at some point, right? I mean, we were all disappointed by our doctors at some point. And that's fine. That's fine. But that doesn't mean that every, crook or peddler of snake oil out there is giving us something better. And sometimes it feels like instead of trying to fix some of the issues that we really do have in the scientific kind of enterprise, we instead kind of reject it wholeheartedly and accept alternative ways of knowing that are much, much worse. That takes me back to your question about Trump and the Democrats and so on and so on. We've seen the attack on science going back to the basically 50s. You started to see signs that back then it was more intellectual conservatives kind of saying that science is, let's say, hostile to conservative points of view and to religion and to Christianity, of course, specifically. And then from there, it just got worse and worse. In the 70s and 80s, you already had clashes between Nixon and Reagan and scientific advisors. But still, largely, science was not politicized. It's quite interesting, by the way, to see that even though Nixon got into all kind of fights with scientists, and even though Reagan was already saying all kind of wrong things about volcanoes being responsible for pollution and so on and so on, more than cars and factories. Um, yeah, that's the 80s. I mean, we tend to forget, right? But even though Republicans began to stray away from scientific evidence in the 70s and 80s, Republicans and conservatives still trusted scientists. Actually, they trusted scientists until very, very, very recently. So something happened, let's say between the 90s and now, that kind of led to a massive drop in conservative citizens. I'm not talking about elites. Um, Relationship with science and scientists. And from the data, if you try to pinpoint the moment, it seems that the Tea Party was kind of the breakthrough kind of moment in time when suddenly everything became political. Suddenly everything that the government was funding or everything that the Obama administration was working to promote was kind of colored in very strong resistance. Now we know that resistance had some racial undertones and so on and so on.
Yeah, I was going to
I
say
don't want
that.
to I don't want to go there necessarily, but the way they framed it, okay, the way they claimed, like the reason they claimed they resisted Obama's policies was that it came from the government and everything government is bad and we need to kind of break down all those governmental enterprises, and science is one of them. I mean, to a large degree science is being funded by the federal government. I mean, now we of course face some of the consequences of this problematic and fragile relationship, but that's the case. If you're looking for the origins of that, you can go back to the 90s and the early 2000s, where billionaires who had a clear interest to fight the science, let's say, of climate change, because it pushed for regulation over their businesses, began to heavily fund Republicans and began to spill a lot of money into politics that was tied to attacks on the integrity of science. So again, it's a long process. It took a while. It culminated, I think, among the political elites in the early 2000s. I'm talking about the George Bush administration, the second Bush. I'm talking about Fox News, of course, conservative radio, but it only spilled over into the population in around 2013, 14. Now, as for Democrats, because you asked about Harris, I don't think the Democrats are perfect. I would never argue that. And I think the Democrats have made a lot of mistakes over the years, part of why they are, where they are now, politically speaking. But I think we should be fair and say that when a person from the party, let's say Harris, let's say somebody else, is saying something that is scientifically wrong, or let's say in contrast with scientific consensus, the party pushes them to take it back. They are often forced to debunk it. And as you said, they actually remove some of these remarks from the landscape, which sounds like they're hiding something, but another interpretation is that they are willing to admit mistakes, right? And we see the same thing happening on left and right media. I mean, of course, MSNBC make mistakes, and of course, CNN make mistakes sometimes. But they take the words back. They make corrections. They say, "Okay, we made a mistake. We're sorry. It happens. All of us are humans. All of us make mistakes. All of us might, here and there politicize science." Biden did it too, by the way. His slogan at the time was choose science over fiction, which also kind of implied that science is a left wing thing and that Republicans don't understand anything about it. We all make mistakes. The question is, how do we respond to them? How do we move forward? And so far, there is an asymmetry in how elites on both sides are treating misinformation.